for the sake of you being able to do that. But whatever. I mean, we're gonna
fucking go, amateur hour. That's what it's all here for.
Yeah, hashtag only tubs. Right? Yes, that's the shit we do, right?
Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs of the Club, brought to you today by Snake River Stampede Whiskey, but we'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show. We are the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network, reacting to you immediately after the FCS selection show where Idaho got spit roasted by the committee. Marten, our man in Moscow, is back on the show. Marten, how are you doing? What are you thinking?
Cold. Playoffs are set, and I'm just going to say just win, baby.
Hey, love the spirit in the spirit of the great Al Davis. Speed over everything and just win, baby. It's brave, bold Bryan Marceau keeping us mostly on the right track. Bryan, how you doing? What are your thoughts?
We'll get the bracket in a second, but I think it's a really mixed day for Idaho. Like, hey, like I'm not gonna miss the actual thread here of hey, we get skipped for first round, right? That's the big goal. But there's some stuff to be happy about. There's some stuff to be pissed about. So good news, but it's one of those weird like good news, bad news things where it's like, what's the ideal situation? Sometimes getting what you want is, but sometimes getting like half what you want and being able to bitch about the other half is the most fun situation. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll just rip right into it, guys. This is Around the Bar, brought to us by Hughes River Expedition. We'll tell you a little bit about them and their pristine bitches in a little bit later. Bryan, things broke pretty normal for the first 4 seeds, even first 5 seeds. Montana State, undefeated #1. Everybody expected that. 2, 3, 4 shook out as North Dakota State, South Dakota State, South Dakota.
With the minor asterisk that it shook out that way because USD fucked everyone over by beating North Dakota State last week, and that solidified South Dakota at 4, which was bad news for some Big Sky schools.
Yeah, if South Dakota doesn't screw us all, then maybe we're talking about Idaho getting into the top 5 seeds. But unfortunately, because we just kind of got into that weird circle of no one team established themselves over any of the 3 Dakotas, they ended up as 2, 3, 4. UC Davis at number 5.
I think the technical term for that is the circular jerk.
Yes, thank you, Brian. I was waiting for somebody. I was teeing that up, and you delivered. Thank you for that. And then, Brian, that's when shit went off the goddamn rails real fast for Idaho. As a lot of us expected, number 6 seed for Idaho, UIW, the University of Incarnate Word, jumps up to number 6. Mercer jumps up to number 7, and Idaho gets the number 8 seed.
So before going further, Dallas, why did everyone expect Idaho at number 6? Like, there's an actual metric for why everyone expected Idaho at 6.
Brian, I want you to jump in with this, actually. Okay. You are our professor.
Okay.
You detail it.
So, hey, why? And if you're in the hashtag Only Tubs Discord, patreon.com/Tubs the Club to support the show, less than a cup of coffee a month. And it's the best place to talk Idaho sports, bar none, in the entire internet. So, hey, why do we expect Idaho at number 6? Well, because the committee released their top 10 on October 30th, which had Idaho at number 7, behind number 6 at the time, Southeast Missouri State. Well, Southeast Missouri State lost some games, so of course they got their ass kicked out of that top 10, as they should have. But behind all the teams behind Southeast Missouri State, teams like Idaho, teams like Mercer, teams like Incarnate Word, none of those teams lost any games. And Idaho first was ranked ahead of Mercer and Incarnate Word in that top 10. And Idaho objectively throughout the whole season and post October 30th had a tougher schedule than, well, sorry to rephrase it. Mercer may have had a little bit of tougher schedule because they got their ass kicked by Alabama, but that's not supposed to matter that much. Idaho had a tougher schedule than those teams and did not lose a single game. And then Idaho gets bounced backward to number 8, which was, I mean, that was just confusing because, I mean, eye test wise, hey, the biggest demerit against Idaho all season was they couldn't score, right? Well, hold up. It wasn't all season. After getting their asses kicked at Montana State, Idaho's averaging 36.5 points a game. So, like, offensively, the Vandals have been fine now. I mean, on our show, if you listen to the episodes, you're going to hear us be tepid about it for a little bit, but we have the end of the season to look at. For the last month and a half, Idaho was scoring right around the top of the entire Big Sky. So that offensively, Idaho has things rectified. Defensively, it's a different matter. But I honestly just think the committee's not that in. I think some of the things we each year think the committee values, they clearly don't. Because, like, hey, strength of schedule, I mean, it didn't hurt Idaho, but it didn't help Idaho that much. Having only losses to elite national teams. And what the worst loss Idaho has is to the number 5 seed in the FCS playoffs that Idaho kicked the goddamn field goal. And that Idaho should have won with a backup quarterback.
Yeah. Or the worst loss is the number 1 team in the entire damn country, and it wasn't weighted the way it probably should have been. Brian, this is why people don't take the FCS super seriously from a national level. Like, this is kind of ridiculous. Thank you for your extremely in-depth discussion of kind of the build up to all of this. Patty Frakes in the comment section detailing exactly what I would have said. October 30th rankings, overall resume, eye test. If you used any of those 3 things, there is no reason why Idaho is the number 8 seed here. You look at their schedules, and Idaho lost to the number 1 undefeated, like, top seed, UC Davis. Both of those losses with backup quarterbacks, and you can push that away and say, hey, it's the team is the team, whatever. You lost to the number 1 and number 5 seeds, and then you lost to the number 1 team in the entire country, and yet you somehow slipped down the rankings to the 8th seed. Incarnate Word jumps up to 6th. Their only win in the bracket is NAU, same as Idaho. They also have a loss to South Dakota State, and then the rest of their schedule not terribly impressive. Then you get over to Mercer, and their best win is East Tennessee State University,
who did not make the playoffs.
Did not make the bracket. Mercer did not play a team that made the bracket this year. But it looks like, Brian, hey, Incarnate Word got to 10 wins and Mercer got to 10 wins, and that's what mattered more than Idaho having 3 top 5 losses.
Yeah, and the other thing is, clearly that, you know, on one hand, like do I like that the committee seems to have like some sort of eye test involved, which allows you to like understand the team over time? Sure. Because, you know, let's compare Montana State. Hey, everyone knew Montana State was number one, right? They went undefeated. What else should they have been? But just to compare wins over time, the Montana State win over New Mexico aged much better than Idaho's win over Wyoming, right? And it should have. So, I mean, maybe we should now understand some of the FBS wins as, hey, you got to actually track how that FBS team goes. Because if the FBS team like Wyoming actually sucks, we're still stoked about the classification. We're still stoked about the optics and all that shit. But maybe the committee viewed that as like another win over NAU because Wyoming wasn't any good.
Then I am really pissed that the committee obviously did not watch Oklahoma, Alabama yesterday, because that should certainly have knocked down Mercer's loss to Alabama as impressive as it may have been on their resume, because that was I'm just bitching to bitch, Bryan. At the end of the day, like, you know, the overall takeaway here that we're going to have in, you know, maybe 3 hours, maybe 3 days, whenever it is for the third straight year, Idaho's gotten into the playoffs. They have had a winning record for 3 straight years, and I don't think I was alive the last time that happened. Second straight year with a home playoff game in the second round. Like, all things considered, pretty good pull for this season when you think about the injuries that Idaho's been ravaged by.
No, well, that's the right landing place, but I'm going to take one more second to bitch, because like part of the whole eye test thing, like evolving, well, if like you care about the eye test, like, I don't know, shouldn't you be improved that Idaho ran through the toughest part of their schedule with a third string quarterback? And then when Idaho hit the part of their schedule they're supposed to take care of business, like they did. You know, Idaho's been putting points up on the board for a month and a half. I don't think the team's in the weeds enough to be like, well, Idaho defensively, they gave up 25 points a game those same last 6 weeks. So maybe that equalizes. I don't know. I guess here's the reason I'm pissed is usually I'm the type of person who says, like, who gives a shit? Like, you don't know, like, what you care about is the bracket itself. You don't know how things are going to shake out once the actual bracket is set. So, like, you basically want to get into your spot that reasonably matches where your team is. I just think Idaho shouldn't have been a like borderline pick to host a game. I think like this team was brain dead. They should be a few in because of the resume, because of the eye test, because of the strength of schedule. So I don't know. I feel like being bumped back to 8 is the committee overlooking some parts of Idaho that they shouldn't. So that does actually piss the hell out of me. Now, at the start of the season, you and I had the same basic understanding, though. What's the mission? Skip the first round, host in the second round. Did Idaho do that? Yeah. So, no, you're right. Like, the big mission is taken care of. So now we have like the actual playoffs that we can talk about and the good stuff. Because, I mean, full disclosure, there's like some potentialities as you're watching the selection show that you feel Idaho missed out on by being number 8 once the bracket is set. Like, hey, one of the things we're hoping, like, hey, can Idaho get 6? And then Montana gets overseeded at 11. And then we got Idaho, Montana round 2. Well, like, it didn't fucking matter, right? Because Montana didn't slot against the number 6 ultimately. The matchups at number 6 or number 7 too that Idaho might have otherwise when you're just looking at who the first round teams are, I don't think they're that different from what Idaho's going to ultimately have. And I mean, I don't know. Like, I thought the ceiling of this team was to finish in the top 8 anyway, which is that's kind of where Idaho is with this bracket. So, hey, like, exhale for today and be pissed about the seed, but you are ultimately right. The goal is to get out of the first round. I don't think, hey, we're going to have Big Sky Awards this week. And I expect Brent Vigen's going to win Coach of the Year because they went fucking undefeated. Like, it is not possible to do better than undefeated. I don't think it should be a unanimous award. I think what Idaho did, what Jason Eck did with the injuries Idaho had this season is something worth acknowledging. And it just feels like the committee missed out on the stuff that we thought they should have valued. They didn't. And the stuff that we thought they shouldn't give a shit about, they clearly did. So I don't know. Fuck the committee, but win in 2 weeks in Moscow.
Yeah, Bryan, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Patty Frakes in the comment section. Well, unfortunately, Idaho got a brutal draw because Richmond at the 9 is a really hot team.
Kind of. They had 2 really shitty wins their last 3 weeks, Patty. So like, I'm not going to call them that hot.
I mean, they are on a 10-game winning streak after losing the first 2 games of the year, but it's not like they've beat anybody that is a extreme outlier of wow, this is a great team. Like you go through the schedule and it's like, oh, okay, well they didn't beat any major playoff contenders. South Dakota just really screwed everything. Crew had 76 in the comment section. South Dakota win screwed us. That's I think the big hope here for everybody was, hey, if Idaho and UC Davis can end up on that 4 or 5 spot, we all felt pretty damn good about getting past UC Davis and getting into the Final Four. Obviously, that was just hope and prayers. That it's not what happened. And you play who you play. You can control what you can control. And now it's Richmond Lehigh, 11 a.m. on Pacific time, November 30th. Be really interested in watching that game. That way, you have a little bit of prep work for whoever Idaho plays December 7th. And beyond that, man, that's all we know. Yeah, we can assume if Idaho wins that game, they're going to Bozeman the next week. But until the game is played,
no. So hey, we can get to. I think we should get to that bracket in a second, but Marten, because it's not a show if I don't give you no goddamn time to have the ad read up. It's time to talk Snake River Stampede Canadian whiskey. So like, hey, sure, be pissed about the 8th seed, but hey, it's still Idaho still gets to skip the first round, dude. Like and isn't it hysterical that we get at the start of the year, all of us Vandals, not all Vandals, all of us Vandals were justified now in not being that freaked out about losing the dudes we did because we knew where Idaho's going to be. Celebrate with a Snake River 1915 small batch night, 3-grain whiskey, 80% corn, 10% rye, 10% malted barley, double barrel finish, first fill bourbon, then finished in ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks. That's what I'd celebrate with, because this is a win, guys. Even though we're pissed for 4 seconds, skipping the first round, that's a Snake River night, guys. Grab yourself a bottle today.
Bryan, obviously we're still in the instant reaction mode, so we're allowed to have feelings that will change over the next couple of days. Gut reaction immediately to Idaho in the state they are with a depleted running back room. The quarterback is finally healthy. The defensive line is mostly healthy, but still pretty dinged up. How are you feeling about Idaho getting, again, a full week off and then a week of practice before jumping into the playoffs? How do you feel about this team at this moment?
Well, I feel really good for Keyshawn James Newby and Eli Cummins and Art Williams to have 2 bye weeks, because hey, those guys had some time off. So if they're the type of injuries where these guys are going to come back this year, 2 weeks matters. I always feel happy for Jack Layton to get a bye week this season just because of how things happen to be. So that's where I'm mostly focused first is Idaho closed the season. We're not going to break down the Idaho State game. We'll talk about that in the weekly show. But Idaho closed the season in commanding fashion. We have extra time off for the injuries. I love the night game itself. I know some people are touchy about it because of night game results. But as far as like the aesthetics of the game, because this is best math, guys, this is the home finale for Idaho. I love that we all get 2 weeks to have people plan for it. We get to skip Thanksgiving. And I like the energy of the Dome in night games better than I like it during the day. I think the crowd tends to be a little more into it at night games. It feels more like the day. It's like the day's event. It's more of a party. Whereas like when it's a day game, I don't know. It's kind of all over the place. Jason Mayer said night game was a request by Idaho. Good. I'm glad that was the case. Gonna be a shitty drive home for me. But I don't know. Like once I exhale being pissed, 6 to 8, not necessarily that different, because no matter who Idaho would play, if Idaho wins in the second round, which they got to do that first, it's only nationally elite teams that are tough matchups for everyone. That's why you earn the 1 through 3 spots. And I've just trying to stay laser focused on this. 3 years in a row in the playoffs, 2 years in a row skipping the first round, even in a team that was graduation and, at least on the offensive side of the ball, transfer portal and graduation ravaged from last season, at least from outsiders, the way that they'd understand that. The team's playing their best football in the second half of the season, especially on the offensive side, which is what I think people should be most concerned about. Defense isn't going to get worse. Having an extra week to prep, and we'll talk about the matchup in a second. I think people are a little bit more erect for Richmond than they need to be. Not to say Richmond's bad or anything, but the instant reaction, like watch the FCS Fans Nation show, which is better than the ESPN show, guys. Like for a fact, that's why we do that. A lot of people touching themselves about Richmond. I don't know. Like I'm fine with Richmond as the matchup. So all things considered, once you get to exhale that bitching, which none of you should hold back from, let it happen. This is a great place for Idaho football to be in. I'm stoked for a night game in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Bryan, the last time Idaho made the playoffs 3 straight years, 93, 94, 95. The last time Idaho had 3 straight winning seasons, 94, 95, 96. Like it's been a really damn long time since Idaho's been consistently good. This still sucks. Like I still think Idaho certainly deserved a seed higher than both Mercer and Incarnate Word.
For a fact.
But that's why we're here talking about it on YouTube instead of being part of the committee, which, what do you do? Fats in KC. I'm sorry, man. I can't even read all of that.
Fats to Mac.
With the KC, it's throwing me off. What Fats to Mac, whatever. If we don't drop loss to Davis, how higher would our ranking be? That's a game I'm haunted by. Yeah, I mean, I think if Idaho beats Davis and doesn't lose that game, we're probably talking about Idaho being that 5 seed right now.
Can I give one pushback to that? Like, you guys are not wrong, but in the same way, when we talk about Eck being aggressive on 4th down, like, you can't ignore when things work out too. So, hey, you're right. Idaho should have won that Davis game with a backup quarterback, but at the same time, like, Idaho won a shit ton of games with a 3rd-string quarterback. If you're going to play a 3rd-string quarterback for a lot of season, you're probably going to drop at least one game you wish you didn't. Idaho's happened to be against the 5 seed in the playoffs. Like, whatever.
Bryan, you got to be really careful about saying 3rd-string quarterback because some people get really touchy about that online.
Okay,
Jack Wagner came into the year as the 2nd-string quarterback.
Okay, there's like 2 people. So like, fuck those 2 people. That Idaho did. Like, Idaho acquitted themselves fine. Like I guess to me, like, the focus is, again, in the theme of bitch about it for a second, but what the right landing place is. Fats to Mac, you're right. Be pissed about that for 1 second, then acknowledge, like, oh, but like, shit, this was an incredible coaching job with this many injuries. So yeah, we'll take it.
Marten getting spicy in the comment section here. Before we get to that comment and discussing why that just came through from our producer, Redacted, it's time to talk to you about a great all-inclusive week-long vacation right in your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal-owned and operated since 1976, and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main Salmon River of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway, and you can check out special trips like one to see the Perstead Meteor Shower. Camp on pristine beaches, maybe even bitches, run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs, and guys, like, you can see it right here on the screen. Fish some of the most remote stretches of river in the entire United States. Just bring your clothes, and HRE will take care of everything else. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now, 406-540-4450, or check them out at hughesriver.com. Bryan hitting the comment section very quickly. Grumpy Joe saying, Richmond is not scary. Watch them play. Don't listen to the talking heads on ESPN. And we've got Patty saying, hey, Richmond, they did beat Delaware, who is not eligible for the playoffs because they're going to the FBS. Patty Frake saying, again, Richmond, the best team below the 8 seed by far, which, you'd hope that the 9 seed would be better than 10 through 24. So Idaho's got their work cut out for them. But Bryan, we've got a week off that, like, I have to keep saying it out loud because I'm trying to stifle my anger at Idaho being disrespected with this 8 seed and my frustration that I think the FCS committee is a joke. And I think this is why FCS football does not get the eyeballs that it should, is because of dipshit decisions like this. But that's we're going to bury that. And we're just going to remember Idaho has a bye week. Idaho has another home game. 3rd straight year of Jason Eck taking this team to the playoffs. Idaho honestly was not going to win a national championship this year. I hate to break it to everybody. I don't think Idaho has the horses to win the Natty this year. Now, year 4? Sure, maybe. Year 5? Yeah, probably. This is good building blocks for Idaho. You could say, yeah, they've taken a step down. They're 4 seed last year, the 8 seed this year. Idaho got a first round buy in back-to-back weeks back-to-back years as Bryan. We've seen guys like Kamari Bailey leave and be like, what are we going to do with the pass rush? Eck found it. Eck solved it. Like, I'm thrilled with the direction of this program, while I'm a little bit upset about how today ended for this program.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's more that you and I always, hey, we land on the same place with just like different verbiage. I just feel like the story of Idaho football this season is more interesting to me than and is more impressive than not. And 9 wins is impressive. Like it's a 9 wins that feels like it's an asterisk. Like, hey guys, understand this is like 9.5 or 10 wins, because I that's just who I think this team is. I mean, I'm ready to talk a little bit about the potential matchup that we're going to pay attention to. With Richmond is going to host Lehigh. Richmond is going to be easily favored. Now, hey, I'm just going to say why am I not scared of Richmond at this point? Because like, hey, Patty's right. Richmond the teams Idaho could have played in round 2, they're all from the CAA. The CAA, I don't know what their scheduling math is, but somehow they set it up or accidentally set it up so like their 3 best teams all didn't play each other. So like, hey, congrats CAA. This is the downside of having 7,000 teams in your conference. Richmond, look, they have 10 wins, and Patty's right. They beat Delaware, earlier in the year by more than a few points. But here's my math on Richmond. Yeah, they won the CAA, went undefeated. Obviously didn't play everyone in the CAA because no one possibly could have. I'm looking at teams kind of as far as what I care about for matchups. I'm less concerned about what happened in mid-October and more concerned about your last month. And Richmond does not have a particularly impressive last month. I mean, to close out the season, yes, they beat the shit out of William and Mary, who did finish above water. But the 2 weeks before that, against Campbell and against Hampton, both teams that finished easily underwater. I mean, Campbell won 3 games on the year. Hampton is like the CAA Idaho State as far as how they finished. Richmond won both those games by 3 points. So, like, is Richmond a good team? Yeah, and a 9-8 matchup, can the 9 win? Of course. But whatever. Like, I don't know. I sometimes think some of the math here is like, well, Idaho got screwed on their 8 seed. Then, like, look, they play this kind of tough team. Everyone in the second round should be kind of tough. I don't think Richmond is special. They haven't looked impressive I don't think they've looked impressive for about a month. So that's a little bit more what I care about. Idaho's not playing Richmond in mid-October, just like Richmond's not playing Idaho in mid-October. They're playing the Idaho team that has been scoring 36 for the last month of the season and moving the ball fine. It should be healthier than they had been. So that's kind of my reaction. I mean, like, we'll break down a little bit of Richmond, Lehigh, what to watch for on the week's show, on Tuesday's show, which we'll do Tuesday this week, not Wednesday. But, at this point, there's no reason to assume it's not going to be chalk and that Richmond doesn't kind of like the Lehigh matchup. But I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be scared. I trust this. But now that this team's putting points on the board, I think it's a lot easier to trust this team. And they've been doing it for a month and a half.
The one thing I will say, Bryan, without having watched a ton of Richmond, they do get after the quarterback, and that always scares me because we've seen Idaho's offensive line, I don't think, looked quite as good against Idaho State as maybe we would have hoped if you were going to critique something about that game. Obviously, we'll get into, I don't know, like 30 to 60 seconds of talk about that next week because who gives a shit? The Bengals suck. But, there's certainly reasons to be concerned about Richmond. There's reasons why they played the game, but I still, going into this, man, I still feel pretty good about the Vandals and how things are lining up. Shout out to friend of the pod, Colby Peterson from both Walk On Apparel and Weber State Weekly, asking about Vandal tickets going on sale. So because the Vandals have secured a first round bye, season ticket holders get pre-sale pretty much right now, actually. It starts in about an hour and 12 minutes. And that pre-sale is going to be open until Wednesday, November 27th. you can purchase the seats that you already had season tickets for. Student tickets also going on sale in an hour and 10 minutes. So if you're listening to this on a podcast service rather than live on YouTube, the season ticket pre-sale and student pre-sale is probably already out. The general public tickets go on sale Wednesday, November 27th at 1:00. So Vandals, plan on filling that dome, because we've talked about this enough times on the show. Vandal football history has not been particularly kind the last 30 years. You never know how long this train is going to go. Make sure you get to that dome, fill the dome, pack that place out, because while Bryan says he loves the night games, I don't love the night games, because I think fans have a tendency to get a little too drunk and don't give a shit about the game and focus too much on the tailgating. Prove me wrong. Show up to the dome.
They also don't like to shut up when the team's on offense.
Thank you, Martin. That's exactly where I was going. Shut the fuck up when Jacqueline has the ball. When the Vandal offense is out there, I want to hear a fucking pin drop, guys. And then when the Vandals don't have the ball, stand up and scream. Please, it's not that difficult. I know that a lot of us have a tendency to have a lot of fun in the daytime. Got to remember some of these small things at night. Colby Peterson dropping the cherry on top. Savor it while you can. Signed a Weber State fan longing for our former glory. Yeah, sorry about that, Colby. But as Jason Mayer says, the 40 Richmond fans are known to travel well. So, hey, Rich what? Richmond. Coach Carter reference, Bryan. 2005, Samuel L. Jackson. Pretty mediocre basketball movie. Anyways, this show's gone completely off the rails, Bryan, because we are reacting to something that we now know is there. We know the tickets are going on sale. Any final thoughts from you or from Martin from the Vandals FCS bracket breakout?
Well, yeah, first, if you want to have a fun, like just a great experience trying to research an opponent, check out the garbage CAA website stats to where their CAA logo takes up half your screen and completely screws up scrolling.
But does it load just as fast as the Big Sky Stats page?
Oh yeah, it's exactly that fast. But I mean, like, hey, that image is you probably have to have a pretty powerful computer to be able to upload an image that big, that fast. Never mind the other parts that slow down the downloading website. But yeah, we got the Tuesday show where we have more we're going to talk about. So I guess if you're like me and you're pissed about, you think Idaho should have been 6. Like for a fact, like trying to be about this, not trying to like sugarcoat it. Idaho should have been 6. They got screwed, right? Like Incarnate Word and Mercer had no business being ranked above Idaho. That said,
shout out Crewhead 76, Incarnate Turd.
Thank you. But the big thing is, hey, enjoy the week off. I think the week off matters. Look, all the top 8 teams get it, but I still think a week off matters more for Idaho than for most of the other teams in the playoff bracket. So hey, that breaks in Idaho's direction. And, with Idaho being able to move the ball, Idaho is just a different beast. Again, they hung 40 points on Idaho State. We talked about the 2023 team not breaking 30 after October 19th, whatever that game was, right around there. Idaho's broken 30 more times this year than last year easily. So no, Idaho's moving the ball. There's reason to be confident in this Idaho team. But get out there, like you said. If you're pissed about the seed, what do you do? Buy a ticket and scream your lungs out in 2 weeks for that night game.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the only thing left to do, guys, is to, as Martin said, just win, baby. It doesn't matter who the fuck they're playing. The games are the games. Like that. That's all that's left here. Crewhead 76, 7 points left on the field at ISU. Very true, but again, Idaho has scored over 30 in their last 5 games, Bryan, and that's a much better end of the season than we saw last year, with almost all of the offensive production from last year completely replaced this year. So if you're looking for reasons to, hey, you know what? It's not all bad. Idaho is playing better football now than they were at the end of last year. So that's something to hang your hat on. Yes, the schedule ended with the gauntlet of Cal Poly, Eastern, Portland State, Weber State, and Idaho State, but you can't control that. I don't think anybody expected Weber State to be as bad as they did, especially not Colby. And hey, again, you're scoring more than 30. Not something we saw out of the Giovanni McCoy offense the last year.
Yeah,
we rolled into those playoff games. The Vandal defense held strong. Idaho obviously lost to Albany, slipped past SIU. Feel a little bit more confident in the offense right now, Bryan, than I did last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's averaging 36.4 over those last 5. That would put Idaho toward the top of the Big Sky Conference. So, no, that matters. But hey, before we sign off, I do want to spend a few seconds talking the Big Sky itself in the bracket. So the way the Big Sky shaped in the bracket, the conference gets 5 teams in total. Montana State's the number 1 overall seed. Idaho, we already covered, the number 8 seed. UC Davis gets the number 5 seed. That's all on the same side of the bracket. Then as far as the Big Sky teams play in the first round, Montana gets to host Tennessee State in round 1 as the number 14 seed. And NAU was the last announced team in based off who they play. Like they're the second to last team. No, I got that wrong. They're not second last team in. NAU is the last announced team in. They're gonna travel to number 15. Is it Abilene Christian, who sits at 8-4 after getting their asses kicked in the last week. So I guess, hey, Dallas, your thoughts on how the bracket shook for the Big Sky itself?
I mean, obviously, number 1 Montana State. If they had fucked that up, I think I would have stopped watching FCS football if Montana State had not ended up as the number 1 seed. So congrats to them. Absolutely deserved. Hopefully they lose in the quarterfinals to Idaho. UC Davis, number 5, unfortunately, like that also makes sense because South Dakota did not pull things off the way we needed them to. So understands them falling behind that school there. NAU, congrats to them for getting in. Honestly, we talked for years about Chris Ball and just the stuck in neutral aspect of that program. I don't know that I thought replacing Chris Ball was going to take them to the playoffs in the first year, but good for them. I'm going to be very interested to see if they get McIver or McGruber on the other side of the field. So that's a game they have a shot at winning. And then honestly, Bryan, I love how it fell out for Montana. Tennessee State at 9-3. Again, that game is on ESPN too because it's Montana, and that's what typically happens. But if they win that game,
because it probably should happen that way.
Yeah,
it's going to be a first round game.
To be fair, it should be. But then to immediately get stuck with South Dakota State after that feels like Grizz tears and Grizz blood everywhere, Bryan. So I'm actually really thrilled about how things went for the Big Sky because I think most squads got a shot to win a game except Montana. I mean, Montana will win their first round game, but most teams got a shot to advance past the second round except Montana, which is great.
So this is where some of the committee feeling a little incoherent comes into play. NAU, it feels like they were probably rewarded for their strength of schedule, kind of. Like NAU did dodge. Hey, this is the point Kyler Neal brought up on the FCS show that this is fair. The last couple years, the final Big Sky team has got in partially because they were able to duck a couple of the better Big Sky schools overall. However, Sac State got in and won their first round game last season in that spot. So you'd say last year Sac State justified getting in. NAU, it feels like they got in partially, being rewarded for a Big Sky schedule. In a way, Idaho was not rewarded for having a much tougher Big Sky schedule. So what the fuck? But it's good for the conference. I'm rooting for as long as they're not playing Idaho, I'm rooting for every Big Sky team in the playoffs because I think Idaho wins as more Big Sky teams win their matchups as far as potential conference reputation for future seedings. That and full disclosure, I host the Idaho show. I care about the Big Sky. Am I fine seeing Big Sky rematches in the playoffs? Absolutely. It's kind of annoying in one sense, but at the same time, it's a fun game that I care about that, you feel like those teams might care about more next year about, avenging a rematch kind of, it's not conference, but were you disappointed, Dallas, that Idaho had a rematch with Albany this week? This year after losing the playoffs? No, I actually feel like the team was a little bit more motivated for that game. So anything that gives us a reason to care about Big Sky games more, I actually like a ton. So no, rooting for NAU against Abilene Christian. I'm a little touchy about Montana in their first round matchup because I don't know. The Grizz suck defensively. It's which means any team can theoretically beat them, but if Montana can score, they can beat anyone. So that feels more like a coin flip. I'm trying not to talk quarterfinal matchups because Idaho needs to win round 2 first. But Idaho putting points up on the board makes that quarterfinal matchup. We've said on the show we'd rather be rematched with Davis than Montana State. That holds today still. No 100%. Change. But the fact of Idaho being able to score some points, it makes Montana State a little bit less scary.
Yeah,
if we win. Well, you got to fucking win.
Again, have to beat Richmond, which again is coming in on a 10-win streak. Like that's I don't give a shit if it's 10 Little Sisters of the Poor or 10 seeded teams. 10 wins in a row is 10 wins in a row. It's still pretty damn hard to do. So it's unfortunate that Idaho got kind of a tough break there, but you beat Richmond. You're realistically going to be going to Bozeman the next weekend. Feel a lot better about it with Jack Lane under center, assuming he gets through the next couple of weeks. Feel a lot better about how the Vandal offense looks now than I did back in week 7 when Idaho lost by 31. I don't want to bring that up too much for anybody because that ESPN2 game was rough, but feel better about it than I did at that point when Idaho had just lost to UC Davis, just slipped past NAU, and then lost to Montana State. So things are clicking at the right time for the most part offensively. Yes, there's still the cute stuff that happens, but we'll get into that with the Idaho State recap and reaction that is going to be 30 to 60 seconds of, yeah, they suck. Move on. But Bryan, any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Well, Colby Peterson saying I'm much kinder than him. I'm assuming he's talking about my orientation towards Big Sky teams, but I don't know. Colby, you can clarify that in the comment section, dude, and I'll address it. It's still a good day to be a Vandal, guys. It's, again, I do think, like, zoom out, sometimes not getting what you want, it will actually give you a better time. So, like, hey, are you, like, is there a chance we're going to have some Vandals who are also a lot more emotionally, like, motivated to pay attention because of an 8 seed instead when they feel like they got screwed out of 6? I hope so. But you know what? Idaho played a ton of close games this season. So, maybe the take you give the committee is, hey, Idaho played some teams closer than maybe they should have, and that was a demerit against them. If that's the case, committee, like, can you guys look at who's actually playing under center? Because that's where the close games generally were. So, like, there's no way to, as a Vandal fan, to not be bitching about the committee because you should. But get to Moscow. We enjoy the week off. My God, how happy are you that we do not have to deal with the optics of 12 people at the Kibbie Dome playing on that Thanksgiving week? You're on mute.
Thank you. I just muted myself while I was doing that. Yeah, I'm at the end of the day, Bryan, there's nothing more thankful than not having to play on Black Friday or Black Saturday when there are more fans for the other team, honestly, because there's just nobody in Moscow. Very thankful that things worked out the way they did. Yes, it still sucks that Idaho didn't get the 5 seed or something that gave them a better shot at hosting a second home game. But man, we're talking about Idaho football in the Dome in December. Like, there is no situation in the history of the world that I will find upsetting about Idaho playing a home game in the Kibbie Dome in December.
No, and I mean, hey, maybe just as far as the environment of that one game, because this is a reality of Idaho filling up the Dome. We need people to travel up from Boise. Is there a chance that the Boise contingent, where they know this is it, guys? Like, look, Montana State's not going to lose in the second round. So this is probably the final home game of the year. I think you might have a few more families who do the math of like, hey, if this is truly the last one, we can make that trip. So I don't know, maybe this seeding gives us a really nice goodbye to the 2024 team. I think we're going to remember this team so long as they win that second round game, Dallas. I think we're going to remember this team honestly more kindly than we remember 2023 when all is said and done, assuming the Vandals take care of the Spiders in 2 weeks. So I don't know, man.
Fully agree. If Idaho wins this game, I think this probably ends up as the most legendary of the 3 EC teams so far, just because of the way that everything happened here. And again, you assume the season is made or broken against the number 1 seed in Bozeman the following week if Idaho gets past Richmond Lehigh. Man, just we'll see what happens in 2 weeks, Bryan. But right now, man, it's just a great day to be a Vandal.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, if you're at a point that you're bitching about a number 8 seed, like there's only 7 teams that did better than that, right, Dallas? So like, I don't know. Like again, like I know I've said this a few times. Give yourself permission to be pissed off for a day, then show up in 2 weeks. That's how do you deal with the seeding you don't like? That's it. Be angry about it right now. Buy a ticket, scream your ass off at Richmond, and celebrate a back-to-back top 8 finish. And that's what, if Idaho wins in 2 weeks, that's it. Back-to-back top 8. My God. Isn't that like, it's just so incredible to think. And hey, I don't know, maybe the other, not trying to turn this into talking about things 17 steps away, but I don't know, like if you're one of those people who sits around being like nervous about Jason Eck leaving, like, well, I don't know, like not getting out of the, maybe having it tough to get out of the top 8 helps that person. I don't know. I'm not that person because I don't think that far ahead. I think in 2 weeks we get another home game. That's what I wanted from day one this season. I wanted another home game. When Patty and I would talk on the Sunday/Monday show about what we wanted for Idaho, this is what I said the whole time. Like, I mean, I don't know, like I'll bitch about the seed when it gets here like I am, but what did I want? To skip Thanksgiving and host. We got it. It's a good day.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Bryan. Final thoughts cleaning up here, guys. Patreon.com/Tubs of the Club. If you like what we do and hate what we're doing, whatever, it's less than a cup of coffee per month to just come hang out with, honestly, the best Vandal community you can find. The non-Idaho game thread is probably going to pop off next week if you're looking to talk with people about Richmond Lehigh. Good luck finding people that give a shit about that around here. Patreon.com/Tubs of the Club is a pretty good place to find that. Skylar Rash in the comment section. When and where can I buy tickets for December 7th? One last reminder, everybody. The season ticket holders and student tickets pre-sale goes live at noon on Sunday, which is 54 minutes from when we're recording this. So if you're listening to this, most likely the pre-sale is already taking place. General availability tickets are available Wednesday. I believe it's noon. It might be 1. They're available Wednesday, the 27th. If you're looking for your Vandal tickets, keep your eyes open.
So, hey, Dallas, I want to enunciate this for people in the back of the classroom. So, like you just covered, like that's the pre-sale is if you bought season tickets, you can rebuy your own season tickets. Hey, let's pretend I'm a person who like, hey, I bought GA for the season, but I'm thinking, hey, it's one more game. The NCAA tickets are usually actually not that expensive as far as like moving up into a nicer section. If that's me, where I'm like, hey, I don't want to rebuy my GA tickets. I want a seat back. I want to be in that like middle section of the dome. That just means, hey, ignore the presale. And then what'd you say? Is it what day is the general tickets on sale to the general public?
1 p.m. Pacific on Wednesday, November 27th.
Okay. So yeah, if you're redoing your season tickets, do it at noon today. If you don't have season tickets or you want better seats, wait until Wednesday.
And with that said, gentlemen,
hold on, just one more thing. Don't forget, WSU, Idaho, and Idaho have a basketball game this December 7th as well. So if you're looking at hotel rooms, get them now.
As well as multiple commencements happening in the ICCU arena. So December 7th will be a very busy day for the
Palouse as well.
With that said, gentlemen, go Vandals.
Go Vandals.